Why are you leaving me at this moment, witch?
I knew something was seriously wrong the moment that sharp, stabbing pain hit my abdomen. It started as a dull ache that morning while I was getting my 7-year-old daughter Emma ready for school and making her breakfast. But by mid-afternoon, it became absolutely unbearable. I'm not someone who complains about pain. I've broken bones, had dental work without enough Novocaine, the whole 9 yards. But this was different. This was the kind of pain that makes you question if you're actually dying. I collapsed right there on our kitchen floor, clutching my side as waves of agony shot through my entire body. It felt like someone was twisting a knife in my gut, and no matter how I tried to position myself, nothing helped. Emma saw me go down and stood frozen a few feet away, her little face filled with terror. I could see she wanted to come closer, but was too scared by how I looked. "Daddy, are you okay?" she whispered, her voice shaking like a leaf. I tried so hard to put on a brave face for her, but I could barely get words out above a whisper. "Just a little tummy ache, sweetheart. Daddy will be fine." The lie tasted bitter in my mouth because I knew this wasn't just some stomach bug or food poisoning. Something was very, very wrong inside me. That's when I heard Jessica's heels clicking down the hallway. For a split second, I felt this surge of relief, thinking my wife would see me in this condition and immediately take charge of the situation. She'd call 911, get Emma to safety, be the partner I needed in that moment. Instead, she walked into the kitchen dragging her fancy suitcase behind her, hair perfectly styled, makeup flawless, dressed like she was heading to some important business meeting rather than a weekend getaway with her brother Tyler. She looked down at me crumpled on the floor with this expression of pure annoyance, like I was some inconvenience that had dared to interrupt her perfectly planned day. "What are you doing on the floor, David?" Her tone was sharp, irritated, like I was some toddler throwing a tantrum instead of a grown man clearly in medical distress. I managed to gasp out between waves of pain. "Jessica, I think this might be appendicitis. The pain is excruciating. I need to get to the hospital right now." I was sweating bullets, could barely breathe, and every word was an effort. Her response still haunts me. She actually scoffed, not a concerned gasp or worried question, but a dismissive scoff. "Appendicitis? Seriously, David? You're being completely overdramatic. It's probably just indigestion from that pizza you had last night. Why don't you take some Pepto and lie down for a while? You'll feel better in a few hours." I couldn't process what I was hearing. Here I was, literally unable to move from the pain, our daughter watching in terror, and she was dismissing it like I had a mild headache. "Jessica, please. I'm not being dramatic. I can't even stand up. Emma's scared, and I genuinely think this could be serious. I need you." She glanced at her expensive watch, the one I'd saved up for months to buy her for our anniversary, and I saw that familiar flicker of impatience cross her features. "David, I really don't have time for this right now. Tyler and I have been planning this weekend for months, and our flight leaves in 2 hours. Just call Rachel or someone. You're resourceful. You'll figure something out." And then she did it. She actually grabbed her suitcase handle, rolled it right past me lying there on the floor, and walked out of our house. I heard the front door slam, her car start up, and the sound of her driving away while I was potentially having a medical emergency. Emma burst into tears and finally ran to me, taking my hand in her tiny one. "Daddy, please don't be sick," she sobbed. And that broke my heart more than the physical pain. I knew I had to do something fast, not just for me, but for her. She couldn't see her dad like this much longer. With trembling hands, I managed to get my phone out of my pocket and scrolled through my contacts until I found my sister Rachel's number. Rachel had always been my rock, the one family member who never let me down, and now I was about to lean on her harder than I ever had before. When she picked up, I could hear the immediate concern in her voice just from hearing how I sounded. "David, what's wrong? You sound terrible." "Rachel," I whispered, every word taking enormous effort. "I think I have appendicitis. I'm on the kitchen floor, can't move, and Emma's terrified. Jessica, she left. She chose her trip with Tyler over staying to help me. I need someone to get me to the hospital." There was this brief silence, and then her voice came back stronger and more determined than I'd ever heard it. "Don't move. I'm grabbing my keys right now and I'll be there in 15 minutes. Just hold on, David. Everything's going to be okay." The relief I felt hearing those words was overwhelming, but it was immediately followed by this crushing wave of anger and hurt. The woman I'd married, the person who had promised to stand by me through sickness and health, had literally abandoned me in my moment of greatest need. She'd chosen a weekend vacation over her husband's potential medical emergency and left our terrified daughter to watch it all happen. While Emma and I waited for Rachel, I held my daughter's hand and tried to stay conscious through the pain. Emma kept asking if I was going to be okay, if Mommy was coming back, why Mommy had left when Daddy was hurt. I didn't have answers for most of her questions that wouldn't make things worse for a 7-year-old to hear. When Rachel burst through our front door, she took one look at me and immediately sprang into action. She helped me to my feet, supporting most of my weight, and got me to her car. She called my parents on the way to ask them to meet us at the hospital to watch Emma, contacted her work to say she wouldn't be in for the rest of the week, and even called ahead to the emergency room to let them know we were coming with a possible appendicitis case. The ER doctor took one look at my symptoms and immediately ordered blood work and a CT scan. Within an hour, he came back with results that made my blood run cold. "Mr. Johnson, your appendix is severely inflamed and showing signs of potential rupture. We need to get you into surgery immediately. If we'd waited even a few more hours, this could have become life-threatening. Life-threatening." Those words echoed in my head as they prepped me for emergency surgery. I could have died, and Jessica was off somewhere sipping cocktails with Tyler, probably complaining about how dramatic and needy her husband was. While I was in surgery, Rachel coordinated everything Jessica should have been handling. She stayed with Emma until my parents arrived, updated both sets of parents on my condition, dealt with the insurance paperwork, and even brought Emma a change of clothes since she'd need to stay overnight with her grandparents. She did everything a spouse should do during a medical emergency. When I woke up in recovery, Rachel was sitting right beside my bed, looking exhausted but relieved. "You scared us, David," she said softly, squeezing my hand. "But the surgery went perfectly. You're going to be fine." I smiled weakly back at her, though even that simple gesture felt draining. "Thank you for being here, Rachel. I honestly don't know what would have happened if you hadn't come." She looked sad when she replied, "Don't thank me. This is what family does for each other. I can't understand why Jessica didn't stay. David, this was serious. You could have..." She stopped herself and shook her head. "Never mind. What matters is you're okay now." But I knew what she was going to say. I could have died. And Jessica hadn't even bothered to call to check if I was still alive. The doctor came in later to explain just how close I'd come to a major medical emergency. My appendix had been on the verge of bursting, which would have led to peritonitis, sepsis, and potentially passing if left untreated. He emphasized that getting to the hospital when I did had likely saved my life. When my parents arrived with Emma, her face lit up the moment she saw me awake. She climbed carefully up onto my hospital bed and threw her little arms around me as gently as she could. "Daddy, are you all better now?" she asked, gripping my hands tightly. I pulled her close and held her as tight as my recovering body would allow. "I'm getting much better, sweetheart. Daddy's going to be just fine." Having her there was comforting, but it also reminded me of the responsibility I had. Emma couldn't grow up thinking it was normal or acceptable for family members to abandon each other during crises. My parents had been unusually quiet since arriving, but their faces told the whole story. My mom looked like she wanted to say something, but was holding back for Emma's sake. My dad, on the other hand, was clearly furious. I could see him struggling to contain his anger. "David," my dad finally asked, his voice low and controlled, but with barely contained rage simmering underneath, "where exactly is Jessica? Why isn't she here with you and Emma?" I hesitated because I didn't want Emma to hear whatever argument was about to unfold. "She's on that trip with Tyler," she mentioned. "They had plans." That was all it took for my dad to lose it. "A trip? While you're in the hospital after emergency surgery? While your daughter was terrified and alone? Does she even know how close you came to..." He caught himself before finishing that sentence in front of Emma. "Dad, please," I interrupted. "Not here, not now." I glanced meaningfully at Emma, who was watching this exchange with worried eyes. My mom put a restraining hand on Dad's arm and he backed down, but I could tell he was still seething. The next few days in the hospital were quiet. My parents took turns caring for Emma while I recovered, and Rachel visited every day to check on my progress and help with whatever I needed. Jessica's absence was deafening. Not one phone call, not a single text message, no flowers, nothing. It was like I didn't exist to her. I found myself lying in that hospital bed, staring at the ceiling and really examining my marriage for the first time in years. This wasn't just about one moment of poor judgment on Jessica's part. This was the culmination of a pattern that had been building for our entire relationship. Jessica consistently putting her own wants first, treating me like I was invisible in my own home, prioritizing her relationship with Tyler over our family time and again. I thought about all the times I'd rearranged my schedule to support her career goals, all the family events I'd attended alone because she had work commitments or plans with Tyler, all the ways I'd bent over backwards to accommodate her needs, while mine were dismissed or ignored. The medical emergency had just made it impossible to ignore what our marriage really was anymore. By the time I was discharged and heading home, the physical pain had subsided significantly, but emotionally I felt like I was falling apart. Seeing Emma's face light up when I walked through our front door was the only bright spot. "Daddy, you're home. You're not sick anymore, right?" She threw herself into my arms with pure joy. "I'm much better now, sweetheart," I told her, holding her close. But even as I said it, I knew better was relative. Physically, yes, I was healing. Emotionally and mentally, I was unraveling. Jessica's abandonment during my time of need wasn't something I could just forgive and forget. It had shown me exactly where I stood in her list of priorities, and it wasn't anywhere near the top. That night, after getting Emma settled in bed, I sat in our living room and really thought about what I wanted to do next. I thought about the vows Jessica and I had made to each other about being there through sickness and health, about the family we were supposed to be building together. And then I thought about her rolling that suitcase right past my collapsed body and walking out of our house without looking back. I knew something fundamental had changed in me during those days in the hospital. I couldn't keep living in a marriage where I felt like a second-class citizen, where my needs and even my medical emergencies were treated as inconveniences to be worked around. Jessica had made her choice that day on the kitchen floor. Now I needed to figure out mine. By the time Jessica returned from her trip 3 days later, I thought I had mentally prepared myself for the conversation we needed to have. I thought I'd worked through most of the anger and hurt and could approach this rationally. But the moment our front door banged open and I heard her voice echoing through the house, every single one of those emotions came flooding back with a vengeance. "David, why didn't you pick us up from the airport yesterday? Tyler and I had to spend an extra $100 on taxi and train fares just to get home," she shouted before she'd even made it to the living room, where Emma and I were working on a puzzle together. She stormed in, dragging her suitcase with Tyler right behind her, both of them looking indignant like I'd committed some terrible offense against them. The audacity was breathtaking. I stood up slowly, my body still recovering from major surgery, and looked at my wife with new eyes. "Welcome back, Jessica. I hope you had a wonderful time." My tone must have caught her off guard because she stopped mid-stride and gave me a strange look. "What's with the attitude, David?" That's when I lost it. "Attitude? Jessica, while you were off having the time of your life, I was in the hospital having emergency surgery. I almost died." My voice was calm and controlled, which somehow made it sound even more serious. Her eyes widened slightly, but she quickly recovered and waved dismissively. "Oh, you're obviously fine now, though. It couldn't have been that serious if you're up and around." Something inside me snapped at that moment. "Not that serious? Jessica, my appendix was about to rupture. The doctor said if I'd waited any longer, I could have died from sepsis. And where were you? Living it up on vacation like I didn't even exist." Tyler, who usually had something smug to say about everything, shifted uncomfortably. "Hey man, don't drag me into your domestic drama. I didn't know anything about—" I cut him off with a look that could have melted steel. "You didn't know because she didn't think it was worth mentioning. You both abandoned my daughter and me when we needed help the most." Jessica's face was turning red. Whether from embarrassment or anger, I couldn't tell. "You're being completely overdramatic, David. You always make everything into such a big production." Before I could respond, I heard the front door open again. I'd called everyone earlier and asked them to come over because I knew this conversation needed witnesses. Rachel walked in first, followed by both sets of parents. The room immediately filled with tension as they filed in and took in the scene. "What's everyone doing here?" Jessica asked. And for the first time, I heard uncertainty in her voice as she looked around at the stern expressions facing her. My dad spoke first, and his voice was ice cold. "We're here because David told us what happened, Jessica. How could you do that? How could you abandon your husband when he was having a medical emergency? How could you leave your daughter to watch her father collapse and do nothing to help?" Jessica looked around the room, clearly taken aback by the wall of disappointment and anger directed at her. I didn't realize it was that serious, she said weakly. That's not an excuse, Rachel snapped, her voice sharper than I'd ever heard it. You didn't even try to find out how serious it was. You just left. And let's be honest, Jessica, this isn't the first time you've put your own plans ahead of your family's needs. Tyler tried to jump in to defend his sister. Look, maybe she made a mistake, but it's not like David was actually dying or anything. My mom, who's usually the most diplomatic person in any room, cut him off firmly. Enough, Tyler. This isn't just about what happened this one time. It's about a pattern of behavior we've all been watching for years. Jessica, you've been putting David and Emma last for far too long, and we're all tired of watching it happen. Jessica's parents, who had been silent up until this point, looked at their daughter with expressions I'd never seen before. Disappointment mixed with shame. Her mother spoke up first. Jessica, honey, we raised you to take care of your family, to be there when they need you most. What you did, leaving David when he was in pain, and Emma was scared, it's not who we taught you to be. Jessica crossed her arms defensively and looked around the room like a cornered animal. So, what? You're all just going to gang up on me now? Fine, I made a mistake. It's not the end of the world. That's when I spoke up, my voice quiet but absolutely firm. It is the end of the world for me, Jessica. The room went completely silent as everyone turned to look at me. Because this isn't about one mistake. This is about every single time I've had to clean up messes while you prioritized your own wants over our family. It's about the fact that I can't trust you to be there when it truly matters. It's about realizing that I've been invisible in my own marriage for years. Jessica opened her mouth to respond, but nothing came out. For once in her life, she didn't have a quick comeback or a way to deflect responsibility. My dad turned to Jessica's parents. You need to have a serious conversation with your daughter because, frankly, I don't see how this marriage can survive if nothing changes. With that declaration, the intervention was over. One by one, everyone left, but the disappointment in the air was so thick you could cut it with a knife. Jessica didn't say a word as she walked upstairs to our bedroom and slammed the door behind her. Tyler muttered something about getting a hotel room and left without another word. I sat back down with Emma, who had been quietly observing everything from the couch. She climbed into my lap and wrapped her small arms around me. It's okay, Daddy, she whispered. I'm here with you. In that moment, I realized she was the only person in this house I could truly count on. Something fundamental had shifted in our family dynamic, and there was no going back to the way things were before. The days following that confrontation felt like walking through thick fog. Jessica tried to act like nothing had happened, going about her normal routine, but the silence between us was oppressive and heavy. She avoided making eye contact with me, which was fine because I didn't have much to say to her anyway. The damage had been done, and we both knew it. I spent those days doing a lot of soul-searching, replaying our entire relationship in my head. I thought about all the times I'd been there for Jessica without question, supporting her through job changes, family drama, health scares, everything. I remembered staying up all night with her when she had food poisoning, driving her to the emergency room when she thought she was having an allergic reaction, rearranging my work schedule to accommodate her needs dozens of times over the years. And then I thought about how she'd walked past my collapsed body and rolled her suitcase right out of our house, like I was nothing more than an obstacle in her path. It wasn't just that one moment of abandonment, though. That was bad enough. It was the culmination of years of feeling like I came second or third to her career ambitions and her weird, codependent relationship with Tyler. This wasn't a real marriage anymore. It was just two people sharing a house and going through the motions. One evening, after Emma was asleep and the house was quiet, I sat at our dining room table with a manila folder in front of me. Inside were divorce papers I'd picked up from a lawyer's office earlier that day. I hadn't told anyone yet, not even Rachel, because I needed to be absolutely certain this was what I wanted. But sitting there in the silence of our broken home, I knew it was the right decision. Jessica walked into the kitchen with her phone in hand, scrolling through social media like she didn't have a care in the world. When she noticed me sitting at the table with the serious expression on my face, she paused. "What's with the funeral director look, David?" she asked with that dismissive tone I'd grown to hate. I looked up at her, my heart pounding, but my resolve stronger than ever. I'd rehearsed this moment in my head a dozen times, but now that it was here, I felt surprisingly calm. "We need to talk, Jessica." She sighed dramatically and set her phone down on the counter. "What now?" Can't we just move past all this drama and get back to normal? I slid the folder across the table toward her. No, Jessica. We can't just move past this, and we're never getting back to normal. I've thought about this very carefully, and I want a divorce. For a moment, her face went completely blank with shock. Then she started laughing. Not a happy laugh, but a cold, harsh, mocking sound. A divorce? Don't be ridiculous, David. You're overreacting like you always do. You'll get over this. I leaned forward, placing my hands flat on the table to steady myself. This isn't an overreaction, Jessica, and I'm not going to get over it. This is me finally standing up for myself and for Emma. You've made it crystal clear where your priorities lie, and they're not with us. I can't keep living like this. Her expression shifted from mockery to anger as the reality of the situation started to sink in. Oh, so you think you can just make it without me? Do you have any idea how hard it's going to be out there on your own? You're not exactly rolling in money, David. You need me more than I need you. Her words were designed to wound me, to make me doubt myself and back down like I had so many times before. But this time, they didn't work. I'd rather struggle every single day than spend another moment feeling invisible in my own marriage. At least when I'm struggling, it'll be for Emma and me, not for someone who doesn't give a damn about either of us. Jessica's eyes narrowed and her face twisted into an ugly sneer that showed me exactly who she really was underneath all the charm and manipulation. Fine. Go ahead and divorce me. Let's see how well you do on your own with a kid to raise. Don't come crawling back when you realize what a huge mistake you've made. Her arrogance only made me more certain I was doing the right thing. This isn't a mistake, Jessica. Staying would be the mistake. And just so we're clear, I'm never coming crawling back. Not now. Not ever. She stormed out of the room and slammed our bedroom door so hard it shook the walls. I stayed at that table for a long time, staring at the divorce papers and feeling a mixture of sadness and relief. Part of me mourned the end of what I'd thought was going to be a lifelong partnership, but a bigger part of me felt like I was finally taking control of my life after years of being treated like a supporting character in someone else's story. The next morning, I filed the paperwork. Walking into that lawyer's office and signing my name to those documents felt like the first step toward reclaiming my dignity and my future. My parents and Rachel were supportive, though I could see the sadness in their eyes. They'd hoped Jessica and I could work things out, but they also understood why reconciliation wasn't possible. Jessica, predictably, was furious. She alternated between completely ignoring my existence and making snide, cutting comments whenever we had to interact. You think you're so noble, don't you? She hissed one evening while I was helping Emma with her homework. Playing the sufferer and acting like you're taking some moral high ground. I didn't respond because there was nothing left to say. My actions were going to speak louder than any argument we could have. For the first time in years, I felt like I was standing up for myself and my daughter, creating the kind of life and home environment we both deserved. The divorce process was absolutely brutal. Jessica fought me on every single detail. Custody arrangements, division of assets, spousal support, you name it. She hired an expensive lawyer and seemed determined to make the whole thing as painful and costly as possible. It was like she wanted to punish me for having the audacity to leave her. During one particularly nasty mediation session, she announced, "I want the house. David can find somewhere else to live with Emma." I didn't argue because I'd already realized that house had never felt like a real home anyway. It was just a place where I'd felt lonely and unappreciated for years. But her next move was much harder to stomach. "I don't think David is fit for primary custody," she declared during another meeting, her voice cold and calculated. "He can barely manage his own life, and Emma needs consistency and stability." The audacity of it took my breath away. The same woman who had abandoned our daughter during a medical emergency was now questioning my fitness as a parent. "Jessica," I said, keeping my voice as controlled as possible, "Emma needs a parent who puts her first. That's never been you." The mediator tried to keep things civil, but it was clear Jessica wasn't interested in reaching reasonable compromises. She wanted to punish me for leaving, and she was willing to use our daughter as a weapon to do it. Throughout this whole nightmare process, I leaned heavily on my support system. Rachel became my unofficial case manager, helping me navigate the legal complexities and reminding me why I was fighting so hard when things got overwhelming. "Don't let her wear you down," she told me one evening as we worked through paperwork at my kitchen table. "You're stronger than she thinks you are, and you're doing the right thing." I held on to those words during the lowest moments, especially when Jessica decided to escalate her psychological warfare by involving Emma directly. I came home from work one day to find Emma in tears because Jessica had told her, "Daddy wants to take you away from Mommy and you might not get to see me anymore." When Emma came to me that evening, confused and scared, asking if it was true that I was trying to keep her from her mother, I knelt down and took her little hands in mine. "Sweetheart, all I want is for you to be happy and safe and loved. No matter what happens between Mommy and me, both of us will always be your parents, and you'll always be able to see both of us." It broke my heart to watch Emma trying to make sense of adult problems that were way beyond her understanding, but I knew I had to stay patient and consistent for her sake. The divorce wasn't just about ending a bad marriage. It was about creating a healthier, more stable environment for my daughter to grow up in. As weeks slid into months, Jessica's polished front started to fall apart. News of our divorce and the reason behind it raced through town like lightning. Rachel, bless her, never held back when asked. She told everyone straight up. Jessica ditched her family during a medical scare to take a trip with her brother. Jessica had always chased a perfect image. She loved being seen as the sharp career woman who had it all, the one other wives admired. But that picture cracked fast. At school pickups, people whispered. At work events, conversations froze when she walked in. Cold looks followed her everywhere, and it wore her down. Her job performance slipped hard. Once proud of her skill and drive, she began missing key deadlines, forgetting meetings, and snapping at coworkers. The stress of her wrecked personal life bled into work. Soon her boss doubted her focus and trustworthiness. Tyler didn't escape the fallout either. Folks who once liked Jessica's charming brother now saw him as the selfish partner who helped her run off. Even his own friends pulled away, tired of the drama he carried. 4 months into the divorce, their bond finally cracked. While picking up Emma from a play date, I heard them yelling in his driveway. "This is all your fault!" Tyler shouted, loud enough for the neighbors. "Everyone treats me like dirt because of you." "Don't blame me," Jessica shot back. "You were right there with me. Don't act innocent." Hearing them turn on each other was oddly satisfying. They'd always stood united, putting their plans ahead of my family's needs. Now they were tearing each other apart, each scrambling to dodge blame. Meanwhile, Emma and I were settling into a new life. I landed a steady job at an accounting firm where my boss, Sarah, understood single parenting. Emma thrived in our smaller, happier home. For the first time in years, we had real laughter instead of tension. The kindness from neighbors surprised me. Other parents began inviting us to play dates and family outings. People who'd seen Jessica's selfish side now treated me with a warmth I hadn't felt in years. It was like I'd been invisible, and suddenly I mattered. About 6 months after I filed, word came that Jessica lost her job. Her slipping work and sour attitude caught up to her. The woman who bragged about career wins and independence was now jobless and struggling to pay her pricey lawyer. Her name in the community was in shreds. Social circles that once revolved around her now shut her out. Even her parents pulled back, tired of covering for her choices. Tyler moved across town and barely spoke to her, leaving her more alone than ever. The final bit of vindication came when one of her old co-workers called me. "David, people at Jessica's office say she got exactly what she earned after how she treated you and Emma." I didn't gloat, but I couldn't ignore the justice. Jessica always thought charm and manipulation would save her. But leaving your family during a health crisis was too much for even her loyal supporters. 8 months after I filed, the divorce was done. Jessica got some money and the house, but I gained primary custody of Emma, with Jessica limited to supervised visits every other weekend. Honestly, that seemed like all she could manage. A month later, Jessica showed up at my door. Gone was the confident woman who had walked out on me. She looked worn out and asked to talk. She apologized, said she missed what we had, and asked if we could try again. But her timing said it all. She only reached out once her own life had fallen apart. When I asked if she had truly changed or just needed something from me, she couldn't answer. "I appreciate the apology," I told her. "But Emma and I have moved on. We're at peace now, and I won't risk that for someone who only values me after losing me." The defeated look on her face was new. For the first time, she saw her games and guilt trips wouldn't work. I was no longer someone she could control. Today, more than a year later, Emma and I are thriving. She's happier, more confident, and more secure than when we tiptoed around Jessica's moods. I've been promoted, we have a steady routine, and our home is filled with real love and respect. Jessica learned the hard way that choices have consequences. She picked a weekend trip over her family and lost everything she once bragged about: her marriage, career, status, friends, even her bond with her brother. Meanwhile, the family she abandoned has built a life full of real joy and calm. Karma didn't need my help. It just needed time. And in Jessica's case, it hit hard.